a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman the Geek, presented by Blackstack Brewing, now in a liquor store near you. I'm John Bonus of Twiz Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of AaronGleeman.com.
To quote the great Steve Harvey at the beginning of every Family Feud episode, we got a good one for you today, folks. It's my favorite. We watched that. It's a great show to watch when you are not 100% sober in some regard. Just tremendous. I'm a huge fan of the Steve Harvey Family Feuds. But he says that literally at the beginning of every show. We do not say that at the beginning of every show. I do not promise that this show will be good. But when it is going to be good, I like to tout that it's the case.
I'm trying to remember how you did in the Family Feud that we played.
Well, my team destroyed.
4 months ago?
My team crushed your team.
Yeah, but I don't remember you doing very well in the Family Feud aspect of it.
Hey, the championship ring still fits, baby. They don't ask you how many points you scored.
I remember who the championship ring was worn by.
Yeah, Randball Stew.
Randball Stew crushed.
Yeah. I got a couple right. I didn't take anything off the table for my team. You know what I mean? Like I was a bench player. I hit my open shots and I moved on with my life. That was it, really.
And in particular, the game he dominated in was Wheel of Fortune. Is that right?
Yeah, he would we talked about this, but he's like some sort of weird savant where they would flash the blank board for Wheel of Fortune, and just based on the generic clue, he would get it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like he would just go
the two-word phrase at the top of it.
And at first we were like
cliche.
Yeah, he would just nail it, and we'd just be like, okay. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about. We got games, we got Joe Ryan issues. And most of all, of course, we have the trade deadline coming and going. I would say true to their word. The Twins said they were going to be buyers. They said they were going to specifically target bullpen and possibly back of the rotation.
Yeah.
And they did it, adding 3 pitchers. Jeff Hoffman, a righty, and A.J. Minter, a lefty for the bullpen. And then Dean Kremer, a right-handed starting pitcher as starting pitcher depth. In conjunction with adding Kremer, they demoted Zebby Matthews from the rotation back to AAA. I asked Jeremy Zoll, because we did a Zoom with him, that I think John might ask the most questions on that Zoom. It was really quite an experience. I asked Zoll, like, what's the plan with Matthews? And he said he'll continue to be stretched out as a starter at AAA. So you're essentially choosing Kremer as your new starter in the majors and then making Matthews your next in line starter, which we'll get into all that and kind of the domino effects of some of these trades. Now, unfortunately, heading into the trade deadline, and now as we record this Wednesday morning, which we usually do these Friday, but we waited until the deadline to give you guys kind of a deadline recap show. The Twins on the field, their play has kind of slipped again to the point that as we record this, they're a couple games below 500. The rest of the AL, the Central,
losing streak,
the wild card race, they continue to be pretty bad too, so it doesn't really sink the Twins too far.
It's like they can't give up runs in the first inning enough.
Yeah. And
the bottom of the first, let's just spot them 2 runs at the beginning of every game. Let's see how that goes.
It's not a great strategy. And we'll talk about the Joe Ryan aspect of it that reared its increasingly ugly head last night, a little bit later in the show after we get through some of the trade deadline stuff. But I feel like, and they've lost a few in a row here. We'll see. By the time you guys listen to this, maybe they'll have played again, whatever. But, it's not the end of the world. They're still very much 25-30% to make the playoffs. They're still only a game or so out. Not that much has changed because of the rest of the league remains, pretty mediocre at best. Yeah. But I would say now it's like, okay, the fans obviously wanted more effort from the front office. I think the players made it clear that they were like, all right, we're doing our job, keeping us competitive. Now we want to see the front office and by extension ownership, obviously, do their job. Well, now that we're past the trade deadline, and, we'll get into what kind of grade we would give the Twins at the trade deadline and the specific moves. And I liked a couple. I didn't like one, like all that stuff. There's plenty of subjectivity involved. There's plenty of room to be like, I think they did this wrong, or I think they did this right, all that stuff. But setting that aside, in terms of addressing the 2 or 3 biggest weaknesses of this team and just overall in terms of adding at the deadline, which they have been so frustratingly inept at, or unwilling to do, or unable to do from a monetary standpoint, coming from the top down in past years, 2023, 2024, etc. that now I would say, well, the front office did its part, right? Like, I mean, they could have gone
And so
further.
did ownership.
Yes, and so did ownership to some extent. They took on $8.5 million in additional payroll, which we'll get into that a little bit later too. Now the payroll's still like 110 million, so
Sure.
they did their part. It's relative.
Sure, yes.
But the front office or the management side has done its part. It has checked those boxes. It has brought in reinforcements, including, I think, a very high upside reliever and a couple of sort of depth pieces for the bullpen and the rotation. Now it's up to the players to actually make a run here. Now it's up to the players to find some level of consistency because, going a game above or below 500 for weeks at a time will not get the job done at this point. They have, I think, 48 games left. You're going to need more wins than losses during that time to have any chance, as weak as the American League is. You still will need a winning record, and they are 2 below 500 as we record this. So now it's like, okay, the players did their job, getting them to the trade deadline within shouting distance of a playoff spot. The front office did its job by adding some pitching. Ownership, relatively speaking, did its job by actually approving some additional payroll, which has not been the case in years past under a different Pohlad and under a different front office boss in Falvey. Now it's like, well, now the players actually have to play. We can spend, we did 3 emergency episodes the past 96 hours for Patreon subscribers. We did a AJ Minter episode, we did a Dean Kremer episode, we did a Hoffman episode, which also included some big picture thoughts. We're going to get into all that stuff, but at some point that sort of disappears into the rear view, and then it's like, okay, now we got to evaluate how this team plays again, which is the scary part.
All of that is so we can have a competitive August and September, and now we get to. I mean, what this means is we get to pay attention to a competitive August and September, hopefully.
Which is ultimately the goal, especially for a team in position like the Twins, where it was like low expectations, low payroll, all that lack of offseason moves.
I mean, it was Tom Pohlad's goal coming into the season. I want to play meaningful games in September. With it, that's what I want to be. Now, there's still 4 weeks from that.
Yeah,
and things aren't necessarily trending in the right direction in a couple of aspects of that. But let's stick around 500. Let's try and make a run. Let's get some leads to the bullpen, to the revised bullpen, and see what
that is the funny part. And we saw it in years past. Let's say when the Twins have had a good bullpen but a bad rotation, or a good bullpen and a bad lineup, or fill in the blank. Even going back to the Joe Nathan days where they had these lockdown bullpens, and they sometimes couldn't get the. They've improved the bullpen not just at the deadline with Hoffman and Minter, which I think was significant, but throughout the season. I mean, we can get into this later too. This bullpen bears absolutely no resemblance to the unit we saw in April or even May, and that is a good thing because that was a terrible, terrible bullpen with absolutely no chance to be competitive or playoff caliber. They didn't have anybody who threw harder than like 93.5 miles an hour. Justin Topa was their hardest throwing reliever, and now that is very much different, and we'll get all into that. This bullpen is significantly improved. Now, I don't know that it's improved enough to say it's more than kind of average-ish relative to kind of playoff contending teams, but they were, I think, literally the worst bullpen in the league for most of the first half. So that is huge. But the problem when the bullpen, it works both ways. When the bullpen is your biggest weakness, which it was for the Twins for most of the season, predictably, it has such a crushing effect that can nullify strengths because you just cannot slam the door. You cannot get the final 9 outs or 6 outs or 3 outs on wins that have been earned by your offense and your starting pitching. But the flip side, unfortunately, can also be true, which is that when the bullpen becomes your strength, and I'm not quite ready to call it the Twins' strength, but I think the starting pitching has more question marks now than the bullpen, and the lineup has been so up and down and has largely struggled since the All-Star break. So it's possible that the bullpen has become relatively the Twins' strength. But the problem is when the bullpen is your strength, if you cannot get the lead to your strength, to the bullpen, so that they convert those final 9, 6, 3 outs,
you've neutralized that strength, right?
Right. Their impact can only be so much. Now you can start to do some things where you're removing starters early and you're leaning more on the bullpen, or let's say you're bringing in some of these relievers that you trust down a run or in a tie game where you would normally kind of hold them for leads and stuff. But there's only so much you can do. If you can't build the bridge from the first 5 innings to the last 3 innings, let's say, there's only so much you can do. And that's my fear here is like the starting pitching, which we thought was going to be the strength coming into the season, and injuries have wrecked that. But now you got big questions with Ryan. You got big questions with several other guys. And then the lineup has just been so unpredictable. Good overall, certainly much better overall in terms of just total runs scored. But they just had these kind of weak spots of the schedule where they just don't score.
And definitely trending down right now. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's my question is like, it's great you improved the bullpen. That's what I wanted them to do. And I think they did a good job, as we're going to get into here. But like the other aspects of the team have to do their jobs in order to be able to kind of fully put into effect the bullpen that you've built. And that's kind of the big question now at this point. So what was interesting, I thought, was Tom Pohlad, and he said he was going to do this probably either whether they sold, bought, whatever. He made his way to Kansas City along with Jeremy Zoll after the trade deadline. They like to, and this is something Falvey did too last year in Cleveland, they like to be present if anybody wants to shake their hand or punch them or yell at them or ask them questions or whatever. In this case, the clubhouse was, pretty enthused about the situation. Yeah. And so it gave Pohlad an opportunity to sort of rally the troops a little bit. And it sounds like he did that. And then it gave him an opportunity to speak to the reporters who were in Kansas City, of which I was not one. But reading through, I read Bobby Nightingale's article this morning in the Star Trib. There were some quotes to Pohlad. And, it was a lot of the same stuff that he's talked about of like, I realize this won't fix everything, but hopefully it's another small step in the right direction for reestablishing some level of trust with this fan base. And I think that's right. We can get into that too, at what level. Like I said, they brought in 3 guys. They added $8.5 million. That's great. When you're adding $8.5 million and it only brings you up to $110 million, it's a little bit of a different story. But it's certainly better than it's been in recent years and for past Pohlads. The other funny thing I thought Pohlad said was, he was like, oh, payroll will definitely rise next season. And that's certainly better than the alternative, which is saying it's not going to rise, or even saying, well, we'll see when we get there, which previous Pohlads have often said that. But also, your payroll is $108 million. Right, yeah, it better effing rise next season. Like, well, how could it not rise next season?
This time last year, we weren't sure that it was going to be rising.
Well, but that's what I mean.
That was even after they saved themselves $20 million at the trade deadline. And I mean, by saving $20 million, I don't mean they cut $20 million worth of payroll. I mean, they cut $60 million worth of payroll and saved themselves $20 million. Right.
Right.
And as a result of that, and even then when it was, coming in at like about $100 million, if they kind of bring everybody back, we were worried about them trading away a couple of extra arms to bring it down to $80 million. So
yeah, but I guess
again,
you're right.
This goes back to something we're going to cover future is like, what this shows that you're doing sort of the required amount to do as ownership. You're doing I don't want to say the bare minimum, but you're doing
pretty close.
Ownership should be doing, right?
It depends whether you want to look at it in the big picture, because in the big picture they have $110 million payroll, and they really, that's not great.
Right.
If you want to sort of segment that or, compartmentalize that since December when Tom Pohlad took over, and if you want to believe in the idea that there just wasn't that much available to them to make moves coming into that, although I would certainly say they could have made some moves that would put them in a better spot now. But then, yes, if you want to give a clean slate to some extent, I mean, whatever, then this is
Paul Tomad.
To Paul Tomad, yeah.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
I don't know that that's reached him yet. Maybe putting it on the free show has reached him. I'm waiting for him to bring that up, but because a lot of stuff does reach him. I'll say that we say. I mean, I see him almost every home game, so it's like, after their walk off the other day, I'll say this because I think it paints him in a good light. He said after the Cody Clemens grand slam, which was one of the most incredible endings to a game. Right. I was coming into the clubhouse, and he was like in the clubhouse or leaving the clubhouse, and he said something like, how effing about that? And he punched me in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was like, not like in a bad, like in a nice way, but it was funny. But so if you want to give him a clean slate, which again, I remain skeptical, despite seeing this person day to day, I am a skeptic by nature, especially when the Pohlads are involved. Then yes, this is the first steps we've seen for actions to match words, right? We've heard a lot of words from Tom Pohlad, and a lot of good words, a lot of words that sound nice, that are the right thing to say. This is the first steps towards, okay, they actually bought instead of sold, or instead of just half-assing it like they have in past years at the deadline. They actually added $8 or $9 million in payroll. If you don't bring into it the sort of past, and that's tough because the past is what it is,
Right.
then yes, I can absolutely see how this is kind of the first small steps towards regaining trust, towards building back the roster, towards building back the payroll. But that's why this offseason is so key, because you can't have then $115 million payroll and expect people to think these are further steps. But then also you have a lockout looming anyway, so who knows what's going to happen.
Well, and on top of that, you know, if ownership gets their way, you're going to have $150 million payroll floor anyway.
Yeah. Right.
So, right.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we haven't speculated that much about how the lockout could affect things and all this stuff is like nobody knows what this is
Right,
going to be.
that's
All we've
right.
seen
I
is
agree.
these floated public proposals where teams want to get PR, or the sides want to get PR.
Yeah.
And I've asked Pollard about this a little bit. I think I have some insight into how he feels on that, but it's like it's worthless at this point. But like I said, I think there is an excitement level in the clubhouse, and that's not meaningless. But I think only winning and remaining competitive over the next 2 months can make that kind of spread. You know what I mean? Like to make these actions that match the words, but to make them actually have an impact in terms of fan morale and attendance and an open-mindedness towards maybe this could be different, because people don't want to get burned again. I don't want to get burned again. Sure. I mean, it's very difficult to open your hearts up to the possibility of a quote unquote better Pohlad and all that. So I think that's where we're at. But now, I mean, they got to win. They're down Buxton for indefinitely.
Yeah.
And Joe Ryan seems to be in an extremely bad place, either physically, mentally, or both. And so it's tricky. Before let's break down the trade deadline moves. But before that, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Yeah, you know who has good ownership?
Blackstack.
Blackstack Brewing has a fantastic ownership, and they've been trending upward now for several years, including getting a better distributing partner. So now you can get them at almost all your local liquor stores. And I don't mean just your local liquor stores here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I mean outstate. I mean Wisconsin. I mean Iowa. I mean Florida and Arizona and Washington. You might have to go and look for them a little bit. You might not be used to shopping in that particular area of the liquor store.
They're tough to miss. Once you see them.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the cans are distinctive. And once you drink them, you're going to be saying, well, I was silly to not have sought this out sooner. It's like all the great decisions in your life, it's going to be mixed with some regret by the fact that you waited so long to actually go and enjoy them. I would start with the local 75 New England IPA. If you're not a big hazy IPA guy or IPA person, the Slopes Pilsner is also outstanding. They've also got a pale cut or a Pull Tabs Pale Ale. They've got their uncut jams, the rhubarb sour, but also they've just got like a new release every week. And that is actually my favorite thing. I know it's also Phil Miller's favorite thing. Like it's all my beer friends. That's their favorite thing is let's go find what the new thing is that they have released.
And John's talking about thousands of people when he says all my beer friends, by the way.
That is correct. That's
He's
right.
just got a group of they're like the Avengers come together each time to get drunk together.
Assemble.
I will also say, yeah, it's good. Go to your local liquor store, pick up a case of it and drink some of it. However, if you want to go there, they're like on 94 and 280.
Yeah.
It's a great spot. They have this giant setup with like a wall-sized television that you can watch Twins games, other sporting events. It's a great spot because it's this huge space, but they've made it sort of inviting and cozy by having like these little alcoves and stuff. And we've recorded a show there. We've gone there. They will treat you great. The beer is great. And also,
even a better selection there than they have in the liquor store. In fact, even a better selection to go from there than they have in the liquor store and the coolers and such.
If you get a 4-pack to go and you tell them Gleeman and the Geek, they'll give you $2 off a 4-pack as a take home. And also, what I always say is they're a supporter of ours. They've been a friend of the show. They enjoy the show. They are Twins fans. They've been good to us. They are who make this show free for you guys to listen to. Go support them. Pick up some beer in your local store, or head over to 94 and 280 and go to Blackstack and hang out and tell them we sent you, because why not?
Perfect weekend for drinking some beer.
Yeah,
Try it
John
out,
has said
Blackstack.
that. What is that? 14,000 consecutive weekends since you were negative 10
This
years
is
old.
even a more perfect weekend.
Yeah, I've heard that before. There's a blizzard. Oh, it's a perfect weekend to stay inside.
Well,
and
that is
drink
a perfect
beer.
weekend for
It's
drinking.
sunny outside. Perfect weekend to go to the beach and drink beer. It's 68 and cloudy. Perfect overcast to drink a beer. Anyway, go do it at Blackstack.
That's it.
All right. So let's get into some of the trade deadline specifics. So, Pohlad said for months that he would invest if the Twins were competitive, and they are, and he did. And they took on, like I said, about $8.5 million in payroll. I will also note that league sources have confirmed to me that the Twins received or will receive $3.75 million in cash next season to cover what was Hoffman's $11 million guaranteed salary in the final year of a 3-year deal. And so that functionally turns that into a 1-year, $7.25 million deal. And, I do have some questions that I'm trying to poke around with different people about, if they had taken on the entire 11 million instead of getting that 3.75 to pay it down for next year. They took on the entire remaining money for this year, which
Right.
is about 3 million and change.
That's right.
They took on the entire remaining money for all 3 pitchers. That they
And
acquired,
also the incentives and such, because Hoffman's
Yeah.
got some incentives built in. Like it could even be more than the 375.
which is a massive change. Jeremy Zoll called that huge. He said it sort of allowed them much more flexibility to pursue different deals, to get deals across the finish line, and it also theoretically lowers the prospect cost involved. Because if you tell a team, hey, we'd like Hoffman, but you got to pay the whole 15 mil he's owed, they're going to ask for better prospects for sure. So I think that had an undeniable impact. I think for next year, though, I'm excited about Hoffman for this year. I think he is underrated. I think, as I will lay out here with some numbers and some tidbits, I think he is realistically has the upside of being a top 10 reliever and has been more often than not over the last 4 years. But I think, there's 48 games left. What are you going to get out of him? 15, 18, 20 innings.
Yeah.
Even blowing one big lead can sort of wipe out when you're talking about that big of a or small of a sample. What
Like
I'm
in Game
excited
7 of the World Series, that kind of
for
thing.
instance, what I'm more excited about is that they just added a potential top 10 reliever for next year and did so at a cost of about $7 million, which is about half what that type of reliever fetches on the open market and doesn't require a 2 or a 3 or a 4-year deal. So I think that's not to be overlooked versus, a potential rental reliever that they could have picked up. And they were very forthcoming. Zoll, especially last Tuesday, he sits down with reporters. There was maybe 8 of us in a room pregame, and he didn't even wait for the questions to be asked. He just said, "We're going to be buyers. We intend to pursue bullpen. We maybe could be pursuing kind of rotation depth," and he checked all those boxes. And so, Hoffman and Minter for the bullpen, I think, are probably above my expectation collectively, mostly because of Hoffman. But I think, Minter from the left side is about as good as I would have hoped for. Certainly in terms of a rental, and certainly in terms of a rental, they didn't give up much to get. That's the deal that I think is just the no-brainer deal of the 3. Of you gave up 2 pretty marginal prospects for just a good, solid left-handed reliever, a rental. Now, Hoffman is way above kind of the bar I had set for, a right-handed reliever. I was looking for someone who could pitch in a setup role. He certainly can do that. I think he's realistically probably the best pitcher in their bullpen. And then, Kremer's maybe a little bit below what I had hoped for. Actually, let me phrase it this way. He's about, from a quality and performance and skill standpoint, he's about what I expected them to add if they added to the rotation, which is like a number 4, number 5 starter with some maybe number 3 starter type of upside. But I felt like they paid a premium, relatively speaking, to get that. And so I have some questions if they would have been better off maybe not getting a guy who was under team control for next season, because they clearly valued that as part of the equation with Kremer. I don't really see his being under control for what will probably be $7 or $8 million next year as like a huge net positive value wise. And so I wonder if they would have been better off shooting for a rental, like a Kevin Gausman type, if you're going to give up a decent prospect.
I mean, we'll see how he performs the rest of this year.
Sure.
He'll be, underneath the new organization, he'll be working with Mackey, but also because he'll be that much further from the quad strain that he was recovering from with Baltimore.
He's a solid pitcher.
That, by the way, starts tonight. We get to start like he'll be taking the mound in Kansas City right away here. So.
Yeah, he's a solid pitcher. I mean, he's a low 4 ERA type of guy over the years. I don't see him as having huge upside. So we'll see on that. I think, with it's not surprising that Minter is the one where I'm just like, that was an easy deal to make because the cost was minimal, but he's the rento involved.
Right.
Hoffman's
Yeah.
got the
Right.
27 control. Kremer's got the 27 control. I think if you look, they traded Billy Amick, who was a second round pick a couple of years ago, is sort of a right-handed first baseman with big power and a lot of strikeouts. He certainly could be a 25 homer guy in the majors. I don't see him developing into an impact guy, and I think the Twins have enough young bats coming up here that they probably won't miss him. They paired him with Bruin Agbayani, who was last year's fourth round pick, Benny Agbayani's son. So it's fitting that he goes to the Mets.
Yes.
He's,
I wonder if that played into it.
Could
for
be.
the Mets.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, right.
The thing with Agbayani is he was out of high school. He's missed almost all of this year with a significant shoulder injury. He tripped on his bat running to first base early on and tore his labrum. So he's been out. He's, projects as maybe a lower end starting regular at an infield spot or maybe a utility guy. But I view both those prospects, they're decent enough prospects. They're certainly not close to being in my top 20 at midseason, the list I put out. And so that's, about as well as you're going to do for adding a reliever at the deadline.
And Minter, yes, they don't have the team control on him. And there's always plenty. We've said plenty of times. There's plenty of left-handed relievers available generally at the trade deadline, or at least, or that's the sort of thing that teams tend to acquire at the trade deadline. He's still arguably the best one of the best left-handed relievers that was available.
We'll see. He's lost significant stuff coming back from.
He's not who he was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but.
Well, at his current level that he showed from a stuff and a strikeout standpoint, he's certainly not a high-end reliever. The hope is that he's adding to that as he gets further from surgery. The Minter from 3-4 years ago, like you said, was a real, almost borderline all-star type of setup man or closer. He's older. He missed most of last season with a significant injury. His velocity's been down this year. Strikeout rate is a career low. He's remained very effective by sort of switching things up and being a strike thrower and not walking anybody. Mm-hmm. And there are some signs kind of going month by month that the velocity is slowly creeping back to where it was. So I like Minter. I've really liked Minter a lot in past years as a potential trade or free agent target. He's been kind of above the Twins level in those spots. I think the fact that he was, an impending free agent for a Mets team that's given up and that he just hasn't looked quite as dominant this year, but we'll see. I think with Kremer, they gave up one prospect, which is Johnnardo Reyes, which is a great name. People probably aren't familiar with him because this has been sort of his year to plant himself on the prospect map. He signed for $300,000 internationally as a 16-year-old a couple of years ago. Tore up rookie ball at the beginning of this year. About a week before the deadline, he got promoted to low A. He's a 18 or just turned 19-year-old corner outfielder, left-handed bat, some real high-end offensive upside, and a lot of room to fill out physically. You can absolutely see him as one of the higher upsides, higher pure ceilings of hitters in the Twins system. And I don't tend to rank low minors guys like that. I tend to be pretty conservative with them, so he didn't crack my top 20 list at midseason. He was certainly in consideration for it, which really speaks to how good he looked and produced.
And how much he produced this year specifically.
But he's, 19. Those types of guys go bust far more than even the average prospect, which goes bust normally. And so he's more upside than I would have liked to give up for Dean Kremer, even for a year and a half of Dean Kremer. But also I think it's unfair from a value standpoint to just focus on the upside and not focus on the fact that 19-year-old rookie ball outfielders, right. Yes. 90% of the time don't even make it to the majors. It's that 10% that you have to really, really worry about because that'll come back to haunt you. And then for Hoffman, they gave up a much bigger haul for Hoffman because he's an impact reliever. You got Toronto sending you almost $4 million for next year because he's under control for next year too. They gave up Dasan Hill, who was their second round pick a couple of years ago. He was number 10 on my midseason list, and that's with being very conservative about 20-year-old low minors starting pitchers too. He's still ranked 10 because the upside's undeniable with Hill. I think he's a big 6'5" lefty,
right?
Throws 97, 98. He can touch 100. He's actually got some pretty promising off-speed pitches too. He just has no clue where the ball's going. Just some of the most abysmal, dreadful control you will ever see. On the other hand, plenty of 20-year-olds have that. And the question with him is, can he throw strikes? Because if he can throw strikes, the stuff is there for him to be a frontline starter. If he can't throw strikes, it's a situation similar to Reyes, where it's like this guy has a real high boomer bust quotient, a real high flame out quotient. The two other prospects they included to Toronto with Dasan Hill were John Klein, who the Twins used a few times earlier this year, Minnesota native, AAA right-hander, converted, actually kind of moved full-time to the bullpen about a week and a half ago, which I wonder if some of the interested teams might have wanted to see him in shorter stints to view him as a reliever.
Sure.
The Twins, he had a breakout last year, got added to the 40-man roster, but he's been pretty bad at AAA, like a 6-something ERA, lots of homers, lots of walks. I think he has a chance to be a decent reliever, but you can say that about pretty much anybody. He's already 26. I think he's a lower-end prospect. And then Demiri Pena, who's sort of, I've had described as a very, very poor man's Luis Reyes,
Right.
which means basically he's little, he has no clear defensive home, he's not particularly fast or athletic, but he hits a lot of singles.
Yeah, so,
And he makes a lot of contact. He doesn't strike out much. He's 20 years old. He's at high A. You know, again, these are decent prospects, but they're kind of marginal prospects. And so I think Hill is the one you have to worry about. Reyes is the other one that I would worry about. Everyone else they gave up, I would be very fine with that just being the going rate, kind of viewing it as 5th, 6th, 7th round draft picks in the NFL type of thing.
yes.
To be the capital for some of these. And then the last thing, just on the prospects they traded that I want to say, I find it interesting that the two best prospects they traded here out of 6 total are Hill and Reyes. Hill is 20 and is at single A. Reyes is 19 and just got moved from rookie ball to low A. They are low minors, unproven prospects with that you can absolutely dream big on their upside.
Yep.
But also they have such a big boomer bust quotient here, and are so far away from the majors that I don't think it's a coincidence that those are the two best prospects the Twins were willing to move here. I think they wanted to stay away from AA and AAA guys who could help this season or next. I think they also wanted to stay away from guys they were sure could be big league contributors who had upside, you know, guys like Merrick Houston or Kaelen Culpepper or guys like that, even slightly lower than that. And so I think teams are still wanting value here. They're still wanting upside. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Twins will be like, okay, we'll give you almost pure upside in this deal. We'll give you far away 19 and 20-year-olds that if it goes boom, we're really going to be haunted by this trade, but it'll be 5 years from now. And if it goes bust, nobody's ever going to think of these guys 5 years from now, and the trades will look really solid. I think that my sense is that was part of their approach.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is part of, sort of whether or not, how much of that is strategic versus how much of that is just sort of Jeremy Zoll's preference.
Sure.
Like he just generally is going to side towards, I'm going to value the younger guys less overall because I'm paid more to, I'm a little, I dream a little less than maybe previous, maybe Falvey did, et cetera, on some of the younger ones, or data shows me that these guys are less likely to turn into something, or if it is we want to hold on to as much of our AAA and AA depth as we can because I want to be able to be competitive here in 2026
sure.
or 2027, 2028, et cetera, in part because I'm the GM right now, and now's the time to be competitive. In part because I've got ownership telling me we want to be competitive, and in part just because because the data suggests this is not the time to give up on these guys.
Well, and this is hardly a fully formed contender, and they're still building themselves. And so to give away AAA guys who have upside, I think, like you said, the data would suggest is I've floated this, quack theory over the years that I think teams should be more willing to trade these far away sort of steam rising prospects. I'm not saying you try to trade Von Lackey after you pick him 3rd overall, but I'm saying international signings, lower end draft picks who have some steam, but they are still 19 or 20. And it's like, it's going to look bad in the moment to some fans because they're going to say, oh my God, Hill has so much upside. How could they trade so much upside? Why couldn't they have traded a guy who has less upside? You could have, but you're sort of weighing or shifting the spectrum between pure upside, which comes with a very high level of bust, with a lower level of bust and more a higher floor but a lower ceiling.
Right.
You know, it's subjective, obviously, but I think the math on this and the data over the years on these sorts of prospects would suggest that like it's not a bad idea to cash in these low minors guys as soon as they reach kind of a certain threshold of league wide value, because the ones that hurt you are really going to hurt you.
Right.
But 9 times out of 10, they're not going to hurt you at all. So I don't mind that approach. I actually sort of like that approach. Now we'll revisit this 5 years from now. If Dasan Hill's, you know, the Blue Jays' #1 starter, obviously that looks bad, but you're playing the numbers here. You got a 20-year-old who's in single A and can't throw the ball over the plate. What are the chances he's going to be an impact pitcher? Right. They're small. They're very possible. Same thing with Reyes, just by virtue of being a rookie ball teenager. So I get it on that sense. You know, I think being able to check all 3 boxes that they did without giving up any of their 5 or 6, what I would say top 100 consensus prospects,
sure, of course,
I think is in and of itself a victory. I think they also added a setup man and a starting pitcher for 2027, which is going to cost more prospect capital than pure rentals. And so I don't know, I'm not someone who loves to grade stuff. The Athletic was constantly having me try to grade things. And I was just like, what if I just write a really good analysis of this and let everyone grade it themselves? Do you know what I mean? That's my approach. But if we're going to grade this, now I'm admittedly a tough grader. It will surprise no one that John is, you know, an easy teacher. He wants to give all A's to all his class, right? I'm a tough grader. I would say I would give them a B-. The more I think about this with the Twins, to me, it's clearly more than a passing grade, which is a C. You know, C+, B- type of range for me. I think Minter was good value and checked the box without giving up anything that scares me. I think Hoffman is very good, above and beyond the level of pitcher I was expecting them to add for the bullpen, and I think having him for next year is huge value. I think what they gave up is a little bit scary for all the reasons we've talked about with Hill. And then I think Kremer is sort of, to me, kind of mediocre, and I maybe wouldn't have parted with Reyes. So to me, it's a passing grade. They checked all the boxes. They avoided their top prospects. Could they aimed a little bit higher with than Kremer for a rental? Maybe. Sure. You know, could they have added a bat? Also, in addition to 3 pitchers, maybe a right-handed bat, which I will cry for the next 5 years, just as I have for the last 5 years. That probably, you know, a higher-end starter who isn't under control for next year would have been my preference, and maybe some level of right-handed bat who could at least put up a fight against lefties, which has been a weakness for them. Maybe that gets me to like a B or a B+, but I do think they did a pretty good job here overall. Please tell me you at least did not give them an A+, John.
I gave them a B+. Okay. I'll say this about, you know, giving out the prospect. None of the guys they acquired, I think, would require a top 100 prospect to get. So, sure, you know, that's nice that they didn't give up any, but that was, given what they got.
I guess it's more the fear of that versus the expectation.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And then in terms of like some of the other things that you mentioned, do I wish they'd have gotten a little bit better? Well, yeah, I do wish they probably would have been a little more aggressive on the starter front, just kind of given all the different questions we've got there. I understand Jeremy Zoll talked a little bit about it. I had not thought about this before he actually had the press conference where he specifically mentioned, well, 2 years ago we didn't go and get we had a pretty thin rotation, and then immediately Joe Ryan got hurt about a week and a half after the trade deadline ended, and now suddenly we went into a 2-month tank with when they finished out the 2024 season so poorly. And I think, okay, this does check that box. Like now we've got, you know, Zebby in the wings in case we need him. And who knows, we might very well need him.
Deja vu here with Joe Ryan again.
Right, it could be
every year, same story.
That's exactly right. As front of the offense goes, I will say, I think that was a tough market, especially right-handed hitters. It was a tough market to crack. I don't know exactly. And I also think even from the Twins standpoint, there weren't that many places where it was like, oh, we can get sort of a average right-handed bat and, upgrade our offense. There weren't that many
Yeah.
possibilities for that on that market. There were plenty of rumors, and I think about them talking to the Angels about
I
Zach
looked into that.
Neto.
They were not close to making that deal.
Okay, well, I heard of I said what they were asking for top 100 prospects,
Well,
like that
I
would
mean,
have required, of
yes.
course, right? Which we knew.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess what I would say is, if you just looked at the Twins' offense and the pitching aspect of their needs were a separate entity, right? If you were able to fully compartmentalize, drop a wall between those,
sure.
I think we would have looked at this lineup at the deadline and said they need a little help, right? And so, yes, you can't just separate the lineup from the rest of the team. And yes, the bullpen was the priority, and even starting pitching was more of a priority than the lineup.
100%.
But that doesn't mean the lineup didn't need help. And so that's what would have taken me from a B, B minus, B to B plus, something like that. But that is what it is. I think someone like Taylor Ward, who went from Baltimore to Seattle, would have been a good fit. But then we're talking about the prospects they gave up from them, and
right, that's right.
Who knows?
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
I think in general, certainly above a passing grade for me. Before we get into Hoffman, which I really want to get into why I am enthusiastic and optimistic about him, let's talk about sponsors for this show. The people who are making this show free for you to listen to at this very moment. One of them is Bruin, which is a new sponsor. They've sent these to John and I. John just said he used one. He's holding it up.
I got it on my desk because yesterday afternoon I was crashing.
So it is a nicotine free, because you look at it and it's like, oh, does this have nicotine? It does not have nicotine in it, right? But it is something that is going to give you energy, essentially. And it's just a pouch. It contains caffeine plus a few other things, but no nicotine, and it can help you with energy, sustained focus. It's built to last 6 to 8 hours. I can tell you that on deadline day, I was like, whoa, I could use a little energy here.
To
keep going with this article.
That's exactly what I used my first Rude. As we were kind of going through that, those other things that it has, which are like teacrine and dinacrine and some, but they kind of offset or manage the caffeine hit that you're hitting. So it's a little like having a cup of coffee, only it's a minty thing that you're tucking underneath your upper lip.
Yeah, and they've kind of built it so there's like no big crash involved at the end or like jittery effect or anything like that. You don't have to, you're not brewing coffee. It's not a can or a pill. You just tuck the pouch in. Again, no nicotine involved. It's caffeine, energy, and all that stuff. If you guys are like, okay, that's intriguing, I'd like to give it a shot.
Sure.
You can go to Take Roon, which is TAKEROON, takeroon.com/Gleeman. Then you put in the promo code Gleeman at the checkout. You will get an extra 10% off of any subscription for a total savings of up to 64%. So that's TAKEROON, takeroon.com/Gleeman. Use the promo code Gleeman at checkout, and you can get up to 64% and get a little energy, no nicotine, and then you can be ready to write any trade deadline article you could ever want to write in life.
That's right. Second sponsor for this one is Gusto. Gusto is an online and payroll and benefit software built for small businesses. It's all in one. It's remote friendly, and it's incredibly easy to use, so you can pay and hire and onboard and support your team from anywhere. And as two guys now who both have their own businesses, I'll tell you, that's it's handy to be able to have some tools at your disposal. Yeah, I mean, it's a pain. Turns out there's a bunch of pain in the stuff.
You don't realize what you don't know until you need to know it. Do you know what I mean? And this can really take a lot of that off your plate and do it in a easy way, in a functional way, in a sort of managed way.
Yep.
And you can just feel a lot more confident that it is getting done, that all the boxes are being checked. That
Automatic payroll, like tax filings. Automatic payroll tax filings are a pain in the butt. Simple direct deposits, health benefits, computer benefits, workers' comp, 401k, you name it. Gusto makes it simple and has options for nearly every budget and unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price. No hidden fees, no surprises. So you can save time with those built-in automated tools like the other stuff like hiring, offered letters, and onboarding docs and direct deposit, all and more. So if you want to try Gusto, Try Gusto today at gusto.com/Gman. That's Gusto.
Gleeman.
Gusto.
Hi, I'm Gleeman, John, not G-men. The G-men were much
Did
different.
I say Gman?
Yeah.
Okay,
The G-men were a lot different.
gusto.com/Gleeman and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/Gleeman because he's so full of glee.
Yeah.
One more time, gusto.com/Gleeman.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the players they actually added and get into that a little bit. So they had Trevor Hoffman in minor league or in major league camp on a minor league non-guaranteed contract.
I think they had Jeff Hoffman.
Who did I say?
Who do you think?
Trevor Hoffman? That would have been.
That would have been great too.
He's available. All right, I take the G-man thing back because now we're even on this one. Yeah, okay. They had Jeff Hoffman, not Trevor Hoffman. They've never had Trevor Hoffman,
No.
Hall of Fame closer.
Shoot.
In 2023 camp on a minor league non-guaranteed deal, no 40-man roster spot. At that time, he was 30 years old. He had been a starter for the Rockies, where he had a 5-something ERA. He had gone to Cincinnati and started to pitch as a reliever, but then gotten injured and missed basically the second half of the 2022 season. So this is 2023. He signs a minor league deal with the Twins. He's trying to compete for one of the last spots in the Twins bullpen. And he pitched pretty well in camp. And I will tell you, Twins officials at that time, 2023 spring, talked him up quite a bit to me. Multiple officials, Rocco Baldelli, pitching coach Pete Mackey, behind the scenes folks, they really felt like he could be something interesting as a reliever and maybe even a late inning reliever. But the concern at the time was, he was coming back from all that missed time with an injury.
Right.
Could he kind of be ready to count on by opening day? And he pitched pretty well in a handful of games that spring, but he did not make the opening day roster. And so once they informed him late in camp that he was not going to be in the opening day bullpen, he triggered an opt-out clause in his minor league contract to become a free agent and go look elsewhere. And he very quickly, I think within 72 hours, signed another minor league deal with the Philadelphia Phillies and went to AAA for about a month.
Yeah.
And then the Phillies called him up like in May of that year, 2023, and he was immediately excellent for the Phillies. Yeah. He quickly emerged as a high-end setup man. He had, I think, 2.40 ERA that year with a huge strikeout rate. And then the next year, because he was still under team control, because he was kind of a reclamation project, he had like a 2.15 ERA and an even higher absurd strikeout rate for the Phillies, and actually was chosen as an all-star for the first time at age 31.
Yeah.
And then he became a free agent, and that was tremendous timing, coming off back-to-back excellent years as a high-end reliever, and he parlayed that into a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Blue Jays, which came after he had an even bigger, longer deal, I believe, in place with the Baltimore Orioles that got nixed at the last minute over some medical concerns.
Yeah, Baltimore and Atlanta ended up nixing him on medical concerns. Right?
Yes, so then he takes a lesser deal with the Blue Jays. And last year was the first year of the 3-year, $33 million deal with the Blue Jays. And he became the Blue Jays closer, and he saved 33 games for the American League champions. He was absolutely nails for 95% of the playoffs, helping them get to Game 7 of the World Series. He had like a 0.82 ERA. I think he had 16 strikeouts and 2 walks in the playoffs up to Game 7. He only allowed 1 run in like a dozen innings. And then he gave up a game-tying, World Series-tying home run to Miguel Rojas with 1 out in the 9th inning with a 1-run lead, 2 outs away from a World Series title that tied the game. The Blue Jays still had a chance to win, but they end up losing Game 7 to the Blue Jays after he leaves the game. And that left a little scar tissue, I'm sure. He didn't blow the game. He gave up literally 1 run.
Yes.
He gave up 2 runs the entire postseason, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a memorable one when you're 2 outs away from the World Series.
Yeah.
And he had closed out the ALCS. There's a clip of him going nuts on the mound. Like, he had been great for them right up until that point. Well, then he starts this season. He's back in the closer role. He struggles. About 2 or 3 pretty big blow-ups. And late April, he gets bumped from the closer role by Louie Varland. And in a weird way, if the Twins hadn't traded Louie Varland to the Blue Jays in last year's fire sale, they probably aren't getting Jeff Hoffman this year. Now, I don't know that makes anything better from people who hate that Louie Varland trade, of which I am one, but that
Wait
is
till you see what Dasan Hill does over there.
Yeah, that is a very weird domino effect, I would say at the very least. But he gets bumped back into a setup role. Louie Varland is one of the best closers in baseball now at this point. You guys know that. So if you look at Hoffman's overall year and 2/3 with Toronto, because this is year 2 of that 3-year deal, his ERA is like low 4. It was 4 something last year, high 3s this year. That's certainly not the level you would expect from an elite reliever. And I think that played a part, obviously, in them being willing to part with him, too. The biggest thing was just they're terrible. They collapsed as much as any team in baseball from last year, making the World Series, to this year being below 500. So they were just selling off parts that weren't going to be part of their future. I'm sure they didn't mind getting out from under the rest of his contract, et cetera, et cetera. So you look at his ERA, and I recognize even in 2026, even maybe some people who listen to the show, which is certainly more analytic leaning, there are still some people who are like, they got a guy with a 4 ERA? Like, how good could that guy be? He can be pretty good. I think every metric that you want to look at, whether it's something as simple as strikeout rate, strikeout to walk ratio, opponent's batting average, anything, certainly stuff like fielding independent pitching, expected ERA, that sort of thing. And also just the raw stuff. I mean, he's 97 average with the fastball, tops out near 100. He has a slider that gets a swing and a miss, almost 50% of swings, which is absolutely absurd. Almost everything other than his raw ERA this year and last year, and certainly the 2 years with the Phillies where he also had a great ERA in addition to this other stuff, point to him being consistently a top, let's say, dozen reliever in all of baseball. And that would mean 4 straight years at that level if you're willing to look at sort of the big picture as opposed to just ERA, which I am, and certainly the Twins are too.
Well, I mean, that's not even really a sabermetric thing.
Right.
Like, you did in the 80s, you didn't judge relievers by ERA.
You'd hope.
Right? Like,
I mean,
yeah, because so much of it has to do with how many of the guys end up scoring once you end up leaving the mound and a bunch of other stuff. So I don't know.
You're also dealing with small samples, so 2 blow-ups, while those are important and shouldn't be brushed under the rug, that can sort of skew your numbers for a whole season. So look at, and by the way, it's not like his ERA has been bad, it's just been sort of mediocre.
Sure, right.
In 2 years with the Blue Jays, he averaged 12.3 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is just absolutely absurd. I mean, 10's good, 12.3 is crazy. Like I said, the raw stuff is upper echelon that you're going to get in terms of velocity, in terms of swing and miss. He has multiple swing and miss pitches. And here's the other thing that I think made me even more comfortable with this trade being a good one for the Twins, which is that even if you are focused on the ERA this season and last for the Blue Jays, in his last 20 innings in a setup role for Louie Varland, he has a 1.21 ERA and 30 strikeouts.
Right.
He's already gotten back on track to being an elite level reliever. So that I am fully convinced that if healthy, obviously, that Jeff Hoffman is a high-end reliever. Now, is there some scar tissue for him and Blue Jays fans in what happened at the end of last season? Maybe. Has he been more prone to like one blow up a month than you would like a high-end reliever to be? Yes. And he is prone to giving up some homers in spots. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe we find out over the next year and a half that he's really, really good most of the time and occasionally has a blip where it blows up and that takes away from his overall value. But in the moment, I'm willing to look at the big picture and all the advanced metrics and the stuff and the track record with the Phillies and the huge strikeout rate he's maintained and the recent 3 or 4 week stretch where he's been dominant, even from a raw ERA standpoint from the Blue Jays. I just think he's a really good reliever. I think he is unquestionably the best reliever in their bullpen, even relative to Gomez and Morris. I think he is one of the 2 or 3 best relievers they've probably had just in terms of pure upside and stuff since Joe Nathan. I'd put him up there, maybe a shade below Duran, right up there with kind of Pete Griffin Jacks, maybe something like that. And so now, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning, the bullpen has gone from just an absolute mess, just a slop fest of guys who just had no chance to miss bats and be good early in the season, to now they're in a spot where Shelton was like, I think I'll leave Gomez as closer. I think I'll use Hoffman as a setup role.
Right.
I like that, actually. We talked about this on the Patreon. If you have the depth to pull it off, I like a team that makes like their second or third best reliever their closer, because it's such a strict role You have to pitch the ninth inning, sometimes 2 runs up, sometimes 3 runs up, which aren't the biggest spots if we didn't think of
facing
closers.
the 7th, 8th, and 9th hitters or something like that. Right.
It's not matchup dependent. It's score dependent, but you can be up 3 runs. I like the idea of using Gomez, who I would probably view as their 3rd best reliever behind Hoffman and Morris now, but maybe their 2nd best. First of all, he's done a good job in the closer role. Why mess with that? Second of all, he seems comfortable in the closer role. Why mess with that? Especially Hoffman lost the closer role in Toronto. But I also like the idea of having Hoffman able to deploy Hoffman in non-save situations. 7th inning, 2 guys on base, he can rescue someone. 8th inning, a tie game, you wouldn't use him if he was the closer, but if you're facing the 2, 3, 4 of the opposing lineup in a tie game in the 8th inning, that's the game right there. There's no save to be had if that goes haywire. So I think there can be some value, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if Shelton and the Twins viewed it the same way, which played a part in Shelton saying, I'll just leave Gomez as the closer. Now we'll see. That's going to be performance dependent too.
Well, Shelton certainly hasn't been afraid to switch people's roles, both in the bullpen and in the lineup for that matter. So.
He's stuck with Gomez here.
He is. Yeah.
He's occasionally used Gomez in a non-closer role, but
he didn't have a lot of other options.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, he had people shifting around roles plenty up until the point where he actually had somebody reliable in the closer role, and then he's going to stick with him, right?
But so I think people are going to be, if healthy, pleasantly surprised by how good Hoffman is and how sort of overpowering he can be when he is really on top of his game. If you look at stuff like strikeout rate, strikeout minus walk rate, you look at xFIP, xERA, he's not only a top dozen reliever, he's top 4 or 5 the past 2 years and this year especially in almost all those categories. And the names he's with in the top 5 are pretty consistently like, this is going to hurt a little bit, but Mason Miller, Joan Duran, Louie Varland, Andres Munoz, who we just saw from the Mariners, Cade Smith, who we've seen a lot of, who's great for the Guardians. Like that is kind of the core 5 or 6 most dominant relievers, and Hoffman's numbers are right in the mix there with anything I would personally look to first for kind of predictive value on a reliever front. So that is as good a reliever as you're ever going to get at a deadline without just absolutely going nuts from a prospect standpoint. And to get him for 2027, I think is really as impactful an addition as you will make to the bullpen at a trade deadline, especially without touching any really, really high-end prospects.
Well, and especially given sort of the Twins in general having a certain level of resistance for overpaying for bullpen.
Sure.
Like even if even if the thought process was, we probably need to beef up the bullpen in the offseason, even if they've got the go ahead from ownership, spend some money on the bullpen or such there is just, we've seen it over and over and over again. There's just a natural resistance there in the offseason to spending too much. And again, I think we both understand that idea.
There's a limit to it though. Like you need to spend something on someone.
Exactly right. Yeah. They've doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on it, right. Over this past year. And now, it does feel a lot different going into next year right now hopefully going into next year right now with, 3 reliable guys towards the back end of that bullpen.
I mean, it's just such night and day from this year.
Like
coming into camp this year, just the idea that you have Hoffman, Morris, and Gomez.
Right. Yeah.
And then who knows after that? Like it's at least the starting point for a good bullpen.
Right. Yeah.
And they did not have a single block in place.
It's a snowball around which everything can gather. Right. Right.
On opening day, Hoffman and Gomez were not in the organization, and Morris was at AAA as a starter.
Right.
So that's how much things have changed here. So on Kremer, like you said, I think they were scarred from what happened in 2024, where they were like, well, we didn't add any starting pitching. We got our 5 guys, and then a week later, Joe Ryan goes down, and then they're just scrambling to fill the blanks. That whole team collapsed. It's not solely because of that, obviously, but it played a part. So I think in their mind, it almost seemed as if they said, do we need a starting pitcher? No, we got 5 starters here. But there's enough question marks with almost all of these 5 starters. Joe Ryan, huge question mark. We'll get to that in a moment. Bailey Ober's been a question mark for a year and a half now. Connor Prelips looked good, but he's a rookie, and he's already flown past his career high for innings. I think Zebby Matthews certainly had some big question marks. And so it almost felt like they said, you know what? Let's just bring in a competent starter. We'll send Zebby back to AAA, so then we have someone on call. Inevitably, somebody's going to go down in the next 2 months. You're not going to make it 2 months with only 5 starting pitchers. And their depth had just been eroded to such an extent by Pablo Lopez, David Festa, Mick Abel, Mike Paredes all going down, that I like the idea of adding a starting pitcher. And I like the idea even, I think Kremer is certainly at the level I had hoped they would add. I just had hoped maybe they could get by with more of a Minter style package in return. But the fact that they value his 2027 control makes it a totally different story than a rental. And so then my question is like, all right, if you're giving up a decent prospect in Reyes, who absolutely has some upside and has risen very quickly to the point that I think Baseball America and a couple other places have him in the top 12 or 15 Twins prospects. I have him a little lower, but then I start to wonder, like, are you kind of factoring in too much value for the 2027 control?
I think they did. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know that. I mean, I guess we'll see how much confidence they have coming out of this season in all of the different arms that they have question marks about here in August and September, right? And to whether or not they are going to try to flip any in the offseason, right? But a $5.75 million arbitration award, agreed upon award in arbitration last year, kind of gets you to maybe 7.5 this year, even if you're not particularly good.
Right.
And I mean, we're going to have to see whether or not what kind of performance we see from him in August and September for me to be convinced that he's going to be worth, $7.5 million. Or...
So that's why I agree with all that. And it's not that he's a bad pitcher. It's just like, is he a good pitcher for $8 million?
Yeah.
Does he have kind of excess value at $8 million? I'm saying he's cuttable at $8 million. I'm just saying, does he have excess value at $8 million? And while there is never any such thing as too much rotation depth, boy, have we learned that over the years, including this year with the Twins. They are getting Pablo Lopez back. You're hopefully going to have Mick Abel back. You're hopefully not going to have limitations with Connor Prelip. You still have Joe Ryan. Taj Bradley has stepped forward. Like, they are going to have quite a few rotation options. Now, as you said, they end up trading somebody, then that's a much different story, obviously. And then Minter, I just view as like good, solid ad. Like, I'm a little worried that he just has lost some stuff with the injury last year and that he's more of just a middle reliever than a setup man. But also now he's no higher than fourth in the pecking order of this bullpen anyway.
Right.
Now he's the top lefty, but he also doesn't necessarily need to be spotted against lefties because he does have a good changeup. He does have a good cutter that he can attack righties with. So he's been effective, but I wonder if maybe there's a little more smoke and mirrors in that effectiveness this year because the stuff and the strikeout rate is down. But we'll see if that ticks back up. He's already pitched a couple times for the Twins and looked pretty good. The other part of the deadline, part of it was the 3 moves they made. Part of it is the 3 or more moves they didn't make.
Yes.
Before we get to that, let's talk about a couple of sponsors here. So
Hims,
longtime sponsor of ours.
Yes.
Here's how Hims works. Whether you look at yourself and you say, I could have better hair, for instance, like the 2 hosts of this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube.
That's right.
Or weight loss. Also, like the 2 hosts of this podcast. Or ED. Well, not necessarily like the 2 hosts. Well, whatever. I'll let John speak for himself.
We're not going to make assumptions.
Right? Yeah. All this stuff is something that Hims can help you with. And we're focusing specifically today on the hair loss aspect because they took a look at the 2 hosts of this show and they said that's what we want to advertise to. But Hims is so easy. Like, there is such a barrier for entry in getting help with that sort of thing. Because it can be a pain in the butt. You got to go to a doctor. You got to figure out what you want. And then it's like, oh, do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? It's one of those things where any push in the other direction, you put it off for a day or a week or a month. Hims can simplify that so much for you, and that you just go online, you fill out some forms, you do a little bit of a questionnaire. You can get medically approved, doctor recommended, all this stuff. They could send it right to you. You can also choose, do you want topical? Do you want a serum? Do you want pills? Whatever version you're most comfortable with.
And this is prescription strength stuff, prescription strength ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can help prevent further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months.
Yes. And super easy, super simple, online access, personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more. Here's what you do. Go to hims.com/Gleeman. That's HIMS. hims.com/Gleeman. You take your free online visit. You answer a few easy questions. They'll start the process for you, and you can get it going very easily. They'll send it right to your door. So just go to hims.com Gleeman. Featured products include compound drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required individual results may vary. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. That's hims.com/Gleeman. We're also sponsored by, let's see.
We're also sponsored by ZocDoc.
ZocDoc.
ZocDoc is, speaking of going to see doctors, it can be difficult to find a doctor that is in your network, and sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to. You've put it off, right? You keep putting it off. You keep putting it off. Turns out that problem ain't getting a lot better, and you finally get to the point where you're like, "Yeah, I think maybe it's time we took care of this." Well, you want to make sure that you find a doctor that's well regarded. You want to find a doctor that's in your network. You want to find a doctor maybe that's close to your place. Well, this is the sort of thing that ZocDoc is there to help you find that stuff. They let you search and compare high quality in-network doctors for your particular health plan. They have more than 150,000 providers with 200 plus specialties. So this isn't just general practitioner stuff. This is any particular area that you want to go with. They have tons of reviews from real patients and detailed doctor profiles to help you choose the right one. You can go right through them. And the actual appointment openings, you can see appointment openings and click to instantly book a visit. And of course, sometimes that can be real fast, like within 24 to 72 hours. So your health matters, and taking care of yourself shouldn't be complicated. Find and book the right doctor with ZocDoc. Head to ZocDoc.com/Gleeman. That's ZocDoc.com/Gleeman. ZocDoc.com/Gleeman to get started and check that appointment off your to-do list. That's ZocDoc.com/Gleeman. ZocDoc.com/Gleeman.
All right. So let's talk about the moves they didn't make. So it has been widely reported by, I would say, plugged-in reporters on both sides of the aisle here, that they had a deal in place to trade Trevor Larnach to the Houston Astros for veteran right-handed reliever Bryan Abreu, and the Houston owner, Jim Crane, who is a little bit more on the Jerry Jones spectrum for ownership being involved in such things.
Right.
He famously fired a GM about a month after winning the World Series and has nixed and involved himself in various deals over the years. He nixed this deal. He shut it down. It was 2 or 3 days before the trade deadline. By all accounts, reporters I would trust, this was a agreed upon deal that needed to, get the ownership approval to get over the finish line, and it did not get that. What was interesting then is on deadline day, a couple days later, there were reports that the Astros had kind of circled back to Larnach,
right?
Because they were looking for a left-handed hitting outfield bat, and he certainly is near the top of the list there. And what I wondered at that time was, are they revisiting the entire deal? In other words, maybe Jim Crane has lessened his stance on Abreu's involvement. Right. Because I think from their standpoint, Abreu is an impending free agent, and he had a really bad start to the year, but he's been very good, much like Hoffman over the last month or so. And for the previous 5 or 6 years, he was just an elite level setup man. I mean, he's pitched a lot of big innings for a lot of very good Astros teams, including in the playoffs over the years.
When the Twins were chasing him, they were chasing a Hoffman level arm, and we think that was happening as far back as Friday or Saturday.
Yeah. So. Now he's a rental, so that's different than Hoffman.
Right. Yep.
But also, you didn't have to give up prospect capital. It might have even been a 1-for-1 swap. Who knows with Larnach? So I think that made sense, but it points to the difficulty in pulling off these major leaguer for major leaguer trades that we always warn against. They sound good in theory, but there's more to them, because sometimes you get an owner who says, okay, we're fighting for the playoffs. We need to add a left-handed bat. Our bullpen's not that good that we can part with one of our best relievers. Yeah. And also there's, feelings towards Abreu because he's been so good for them over the years. So that gets nixed, but then they circle back. So then I'm like, okay, are they revisiting that trade, or are the Twins maybe open to trading Larnach for prospects, of which the Astros have plenty that would be enticing to them? Now then, about an hour before the deadline, the Astros make a trade for a different left-handed hitting outfielder, this time a center fielder, Dalton Varsho, the pride of Marshfield, Wisconsin. I have a picture on my refrigerator door right now of my beloved girlfriend, Becky, as a 5-year-old posing at his father's baseball camp with him, Gary Varsho, who played in the majors. So I know a lot about Dalton Varsho. He's a left-handed hitter, and he's an outfielder. like Larnach, and he's got good power. I would say he is a step down offensively from Larnach, at least this season.
Yes.
But he is a Gold Glove caliber center fielder where I'll just say Trevor Larnach is a left fielder and very much not Gold Glove caliber. And so the Astros kind of pivoted to a slightly different version of what they were looking for. So that took them off the board for Larnach. Then we heard kind of late in the game, the Padres were kind of kicking the tires on Larnach. I will tell you a couple years ago, the Padres were interested in Larnach at the trade deadline. I can confirm that with some sources. So that made sense too. And then there were maybe some other teams that were involved because Larnach is having a good year. And he's just one of these plug and play DH, left field, right field, left-handed bat, put him in the middle of the lineup, whatever. They ended up not trading Larnach, just as they ended up not trading Ryan Jeffers or Josh Bell or any of the other bats. And we'll get into that kind of the domino effect of that decision and what drove that. But what's interesting to me with Larnach especially, if you make that deal for Abreu, you definitely do not make the deal for Hoffman a few days later.
Agreed.
And so we'll see on that. I think track record-wise, they're very similar. I would probably prefer Hoffman in this exact moment, and I would certainly prefer having Hoffman for 2027, whereas Abreu was going to walk as a free agent. Now, I would also prefer to have moved Larnach instead of Dasan Hill to make that happen. So, I can see both sides of that argument.
And the idea behind moving Larnach was you can backfill that spot. You can backfill that spot with, say, Walker Jenkins out of AAA.
Or if Buxton's back soon, you just play Rodin in left field. You continue to play Keishel in right field. Like, they have some options, bats that are ready. Hell, you could call Matt Wallner and plug him in as that type. So, and it also improves your defense probably because you're moving Larnach, you're backfilling with better outfielders, that sort of thing. But what's intriguing to me here is, as opposed to Jeffers, who's an impending free agent, Larnach has one more year of team control via arbitration for next year. And he's going to be coming off a career year, which means he's going to probably get a bump from about $4.5 million to, I would say, $7 or $8 million, realistically speaking. That's not a crazy price for the type of hitter he is. Just as $4.5 million.
He's got a 134 OPS plus. Yeah, that's not terrible.
First of all, I can assure you nobody in an arbitration hearing has any idea what an OPS plus is.
I get fair point.
But they're going to make the case that he's poor defensively and he can't hit lefties, and he's only going to have 12 homers and his RBI total is not that big. I think it's not going to be crazy money. But just as $4.5 million wasn't crazy money for him now, the issue with Larnach and why guys like me were thinking they should trade him this offseason wasn't because the money was exorbitant. The money's fine for him. Even $8 million next year for that type of bat is not bad. It's that the difference between paying him $8 million and paying Rodin or Walker Jenkins or somebody like that the minimum to fill that same role frees up that $8 million to spend elsewhere, and that's particularly helpful if the Twins have a low payroll again. All of which is why it's intriguing to me that this suggests Larnach might have some offseason trade market too.
Of course. Yep.
And which has been a struggle for the Twins. Part of the reason they kept Larnach is because they believed in him. Part of the reason they kept Larnach is they just weren't their asking price for him in trade, and he was very available in multiple off seasons, sort of like Max Kepler back in the day. Exactly. Nobody hit that baseline that they were willing to do. Now, that could suggest the league undervalues him. It could suggest the league overvalues him. Whatever the case, the fact that multiple teams were making what I would perceive as, at least in the Astros case, a pretty decent offer for Larnach at the trade deadline suggests to me that one or more of those teams could probably circle back in November or December or January if there's no lockout and give you something for Larnach then too.
Potentially. It kind of depends a little bit on how many left-handed corner outfielders are in the free agent market and
how he finishes.
Also available right then. Right. Yeah, exactly.
How
and how
he finishes. Right. But I think that's a change from last year where I viewed him as sort of no excess value, really. They also didn't trade Jeffers. Yeah. I think by the end, we were pretty certain they weren't going to trade Jeffers, although the top three teams in the American League East, the Yankees, the Rays, and the Red Sox, were all consistently reported to be not only interested in adding a starting caliber catcher at the deadline, but linked to Ryan Jeffers specifically. And they were scouts at Target Field looking at Ryan Jeffers right up until the last home game that they played. And sure enough, the Rays went out and traded for a starting catcher, Liam Hicks from the Marlins, gave up a decent haul for that. And then the Red Sox made one of the biggest splashes of the deadline, traded in the division for Adley Rutschman, the former All-Star Orioles and former number 1 overall pick Orioles catcher, who's got another year of team control. And they gave up what is widely seen as a very big return for Adley Rutschman. The Yankees did not end up making a splash at catcher, but were certainly rumored to be interested in Jeffers. So it's not just that they held on to Jeffers. They held on to Jeffers in a market where people were going after catchers and paying what I would say pretty good prices for catchers. And I'm sure that was tempting. I asked around a little bit, and it's not that they were shopping Jeffers, but they absolutely did get strong interest in Jeffers for multiple teams right up into the last minute. I don't know the specific prospects being offered, but I was told that it was a strong market for him on a trade front. And so you are giving up something by keeping Ryan Jeffers. You are giving up whatever prospects or major leaguers, let's say, you would have brought back, because as an impending free agent, he's not going to be on the team next year without the qualifying offer becoming involved. If you allow him to hit free agency, he will sign elsewhere as a free agent, probably on a 3 or 4 year deal, and you will get absolutely nothing in return. In which case, you're like, was it worth keeping him for the last 2 months to let him walk for nothing? But I also think, as we talked about in the weeks leading up or the days leading up to the deadline, that it would have, if you buy even Hoffman, Kremer, and Minter, which we like, and then you turn around and sell your starting catcher in a career year playing at an all-star level, one of your best hitters, one of your most valuable all-around players, a key clubhouse member, that cancels out all the buying you do at that point, in my mind, both from a fan morale and perception standpoint, but also from just a team quality standpoint.
And as we point out, the bullpen needs a lead to hold.
Right. And I mean, Jeffers has just probably been their best player on a game-by-game basis, taking out the time he missed, but he's been very good since coming back from the injury. And so I get why they didn't do that. They wanted to add without subtracting, and I like that. I would really feel a lot better about this entire situation if I thought there was a strong chance they would make him the qualifying offer early in free agency, before he hits free agency. I wasn't able to get a good answer on that. I think Dan even asked Zoll straight up about that on the Zoom we did and didn't get a firm answer. Not that I would expect them to, but if they're willing to make him the qualifying offer, which is going to be essentially a 1 year deal worth about $24 million, then I really love the decision not to trade him in this context. I think ultimately that was the right call either way. But the trade-off there is letting him walk for nothing. But if you make him the qualifying offer, then there are only 2 scenarios. One, he accepts the qualifying offer, and you're paying an all-star level catcher $24 million next year. Now, that's more than I would prefer to pay, but it's not that much more than he's going to make on the open market. Let's say he makes $15-18 million on the open market. You're paying a $5 or $6 million premium, and by doing that, you A, get to keep Ryan Jeffers for 1 more year, but then B, you get to keep him without having to commit a 4-year, $75 million deal. I think that's worth paying the premium for. The only other alternative.
There are other places you can. We've just been through a couple of different options for also saving another $7 to $8 million.
But also, why do you need to save $7 or $8 million? Spend the money. Let's go.
Sure.
He could also turn down that qualifying offer in the hopes of signing a long-term deal. And if that happens, then you've lost him, but you recoup the value in what you would have gotten at the deadline in a trade for him, because you get a late first round or early second round draft pick for him anyway. So to me, if I was certain the Twins were willing to make the qualifying offer, which I personally would absolutely make Ryan Jeffers, then I would view this extremely favorably. I would view it as they added, they didn't subtract, they fought off the urge to cash in Ryan Jeffers, and now they'll either give him the qualifying offer and keep him next year, which is great for next year's team, or they'll give him the qualifying offer, he'll turn it down, and they'll get that compensation in some form more or less similar after that. But if they don't make him the qualifying offer, then this leaves them open to quite a bit of 2020 hindsight, I think, in that regard.
Well, yeah, I guess we will have to see. I mean, part of it is going to depend on how he finishes, what his health is, et cetera, as we get to the end of it. There's certainly things that would be reasons why you would not give him the qualifying offer that might happen here between now and the end of the season.
Just to be clear, I don't think they will. But also, here's another scenario. You make him the qualifying offer, he takes it, and you go, okay, well, now we got a guy on the books for $24 million. That's probably a $15 or $18 million player, whatever. Well, let's say you're in a selling position next deadline. Let's say next season doesn't go well. you can trade him next year
Sure,
at the deadline
yeah, that's
too.
right.
Like, you're just sort of kicking that can down the road.
Well, we've talked about it other times. Like if you're going to pay your starting catcher $24 million, then maybe you take a look at the backup catcher that's going to be making $7 million and
Right.
$3 million, has a $3 million option on the back end, and say, well, maybe we need to figure out some way to get him off of our team, even if it means eating a couple $1 million worth of salary at some point.
Yeah, and in fact, I would have been open to moving Caratini to one of these teams that needed a catcher if they wanted to take on that whole money and give you something.
I would have too.
Caratini now hasn't played that well since Jeffers came
Right.
back,
Yes.
and his overall numbers are pretty mediocre at best. So but they also didn't add any hitters. So they didn't trade away Larnach. They didn't trade away Jeffers. They didn't even trade away like Josh Bell, which I would have been maybe in favor of,
Right.
just to clear a spot for a younger bat. But they kept the lineup intact, so at least they can say, look, this lineup's overperformed so far. It's been streaky, but we're at least giving them a chance to put up consistent run scoring over the last 2 months. So we'll see. But the lineup's been in a funk for quite a while now. I mean, I think they've relied on kind of the mystique and aura of great success with runners in scoring position
Yep.
in the first half to score more runs than maybe their sort of baseline performance would suggest. And it's not necessarily that they've cratered in that regard, but it's just not something you can count on a game by game basis to cash in all your runners at all times like they did early on in the first half. And so I think you're going to see peaks and valleys more. But I mean, realistically, the lineup should take it as, I guess, a vote of confidence that they didn't subtract. They also maybe didn't feel the need to add, but realistically, they need Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee, Luke Kershaw, Alan Roden, and Josh Bell, I would say, as a group.
Yeah.
Though they need those guys to be the additions. They need those guys to step up. They need those guys to be consistently good that they've shown flashes of here or there. And if 3 of those 5 can do that, and if Byron Buxton can come back, these are a lot of ifs. I get it.
There's a lot of ifs here.
The lineup can certainly be above average or good enough.
I think over the next week and a half, I think it's going to be another hot topic is going to be sort of how is this lineup doing, and do they need to inject some additional talent from AAA into it? Kaelen Culpepper had 3 hits yesterday down in St. Paul. He feels like he's coming back from that injury that he was dealing with. We've still got Walker Jenkins down there. If we'll see what Buxton's situation is. He's now a week since the cortisone or the shot, whatever that he had for that hip to kind of do things. So he's got another at least 3 days on the IL, and then we'll kind of see where he's at, I guess. That when Zoll was asked at the press conference, do you wish you would have added some offense, or were you trying to add some offense or something? His answer was, well, we were open to creative ideas on that, but the first thing he mentioned is we got some depth at AAA that we think we can leverage in terms of offense if we need it. And, it might very well be that is going to be, I don't think you can rely on those guys adding instant offense to you in a pennant race, but if we continue to see this team struggle to score runs, I wouldn't be shocked if a week from now that's one of the primary talking points that we have here is like what come August 15th and we don't have to worry about somebody's rookie status anymore. Do we need to start considering making some changes here?
Yeah, I mean, you got to actually do it.
Yep.
To make that happen. It doesn't do you any good to have them at AAA and talk about them.
That's right.
I think in both Jenkins' case and Culpepper's case, there's also the possibility that you can improve the defense in addition to providing a boost to the lineup with them.
Right.
So
yeah, right.
And they're not in a situation where you'd have to drop somebody you'll really miss to add one or both of those guys at whatever point. I mean, they're currently carrying 3 catchers. And they have Alex Jackson as a third catcher, and he's done a nice job.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but it's just a very limited role for him. And they're also now carrying Tristan Gray for whatever reason. Yeah. So that means the bench is just your third catcher who is little used, your, I guess, call him utility infielder in Gray, who should be little used, and then your actual backup catcher in Caratini, who's not that needed with Jeffers, but does have some role. And then whichever of Alan Roden and and Austin Martin are not starting that day in the outfield because they've effectively formed a lefty-righty platoon.
If you call up Jenkins to play center field, then you've got Kershaw in right field, and I'm not sure you necessarily even need Roden on the roster at that point. So,
yeah, I mean he hasn't done that much, obviously.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just in general, are they better off, let's say in September, with Walker Jenkins and Kaelen Culpepper than Alex Jackson and Tristan Gray? If they're not, I think those guys are probably overrated as prospects.
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Fair, yeah.
By a fair amount. Before we get into Joe Ryan stuff here, which I wanted to finish at least with that, let's talk about last batch of sponsors here.
That's right.
Which we have a new sponsor in Ridge,
That's right.
and so here's what Ridge, they are, I think, probably known mostly for wallets. That's how I knew of Ridge before this.
Yep.
But they also have like amazing power banks for charging stuff on the go, the wallets, luggage, just kind of everyday gear, but like premium everyday gear.
Yes.
And so they're also now doing a sweepstakes. This is their 6th year, they tell us. And it runs from now through September 8th. Tony Hawk's the spokesman. So, okay, that's interesting.
That's awesome.
Two customers of theirs, two winners, get to choose between a Lamborghini, a Ford Hennessy Velociraptor, which that's such a fancy car, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
A souped up Ford Bronco, or $100,000 in cash.
Yeah, right.
And so, like, if you've been wanting to try Ridge, now's the time to try it, because you also can get entered in if you purchase some products to the drawings for those.
I'll give you another one reason. They now have Major League Baseball wallets, right?
Yeah, Twins branded wallet, basically. Yeah.
There
John's
it is.
holding it up on YouTube right there.
High quality metal wallet.
John, can you take your credit card out there and just hold it right up to the thing? I just need to write down some numbers there, actually.
See if I can
there it is right there.
That's right. We've all been in situations where people recognize the credit card that you're putting down, like, oh, look at the credit card that person has. Well, you know what holds those credit cards? The wallet. That's also something that people notice when you're pulling out to pay something. And this is a Twins wallet that looks really good, looks really sharp, high quality
sturdy
metal
too.
construction.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
And there's a bunch of different designs. I went and looked at the site. I picked my design. John picked his design. Like, it's a little tricky for me to show up at the ballpark in the press box with a Twins wallet, but it is what it is. So I chose a different design.
Lumber.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different designs. It's very sturdy. Like I said, they also have power banks for charging on the go, all kinds of other products like that. And so if you're ready to upgrade your wallet and maybe your ride by winning that sweepstakes, for limited time only, head to ridge.com, RIDGE, ridge.com, and use the code Gleeman at checkout. You will get 10% off your order, and you will be entered into Ridge's biggest sweepstakes ever for the Lamborghini, the Velociraptor, the Bronco, or just a whole bunch of $100,000 in cash. No purchase necessary to enter, but every dollar you spend gets you more entries. That's ridge.com, and then use the promo code Gleeman. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard it. Tell them, help support our show by telling them Gleeman and the Geek. That's ridge.com.
Which one are you going to take when you win, Aaron? Are you going to get the Lamborghini, the Ford Bronco? What's your favorite? This is your chance to get rid of the Honda Fit that you've got driving around there.
Yeah. I would like to drive something called the Velociraptor, whatever that is, I think.
There you go.
So anyway, ridge.com. Go check out the wallets and all kinds of other stuff they offer there. Ridge.com. Use the promo code Gleeman.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about the bullpen. I had a note here to just sort of lay out how good the bullpen could potentially be. It's just a complete remodel from April.
Yes.
Where they had no one throwing even 94. Now they have you got Hoffman, Gomez, and Morris as your late inning trio as righties. You got Minter in the mix, maybe on a fourth level or maybe mixed in, depending if you're facing some lefty heavy lineups. From the left side, they also picked up Tommy Nance about a month before the deadline, which is kind of functionally a deadline trade.
He's a hell of a good fifth reliever.
Yeah, I mean, he's fine as a fifth reliever. He's at least an MLB caliber arm, which they were very much lacking early on. And so now I would say, have three spots that are kind of iffy, which is two lefties in Taylor Rogers and Funderburk, and then the Travis Adams righty spot. They've all pitched better of late than they have for much of the season. It's a kind of a 4.5, 5-man pen with then 3 that you need to kind of mix and match in lower leverage spots there. But I think that can work because Funderburk and Rogers won't be needed in the number 1 lefty role because now you've got Minter, and Adams has been more of an innings eater or a multi-inning guy. So look, is it a good bullpen relative to contending teams? Probably maybe short of that. Is it an average bullpen? Absolutely. Is an average bullpen so just miles above where they were at last year at this time?
100%.
All offseason, all spring, coming out of spring training, opening day, April, May, most of June. I mean, just it's night and day. And so now the task is get good enough starting pitching and good enough hitting that you can hand over some leads to that new bullpen and see if they can, hold on for dear life there. All right, let's talk about Joe Ryan to finish up here. We put it off long enough. He had another, discouraging outing against the Royals Tuesday. We talked weeks out from the deadline when there was still some question. The Twins hadn't kind of declared their approach as buyers of might they still sell Joe Ryan here at this point?
Right.
And what we said at the time, going back a month, let's say, was, either way, whether the Twins end up being buyers or sellers, Joe Ryan is so essential to either of those plans. If they became sellers, which they did not do, but if they became sellers, he is their number 1 trade asset by far.
Right.
They could have gotten a haul for him last year at the deadline. They could have gotten a haul for him this year, or so we thought at the deadline. But even if, as they ended up choosing, they take the buyer route, and that removes Joe Ryan as a selling component. Well, it only makes sense to buy as a 500-ish team if you think Joe Ryan's going to pitch like Joe Ryan down the stretch and you have a frontline starter to carry you and maybe in the playoffs to lean on along with Taj Bradley in a short series. Well, unfortunately now, his performance for the 5th year in a row has completely fallen apart after the All-Star game. Some years it's been injury.
Yeah.
Some years it's been durability and effectiveness. Some years it's been both. He has a 3.17 ERA for his entire career before the All-Star break and a 4.93 ERA for his career after the All-Star break. I did crunch the numbers a couple weeks ago on this and looked back through all the pitchers who have started at least 100 career games for the Minnesota Twins in their entire history. Not one of them is anywhere close to the level of drop-off that Joe Ryan has experienced for his career from the first half to the second half. And what's remarkable there, it's not just 1 or 2 bad years that are skewing the results. Yeah. It is every single year. His best second half ERA in any year would be his worst first half ERA in any year. And this year, he had a 2.85 ERA at the All-Star break, chosen for a second straight All-Star game, deservingly. Throws a scoreless inning and looks really good in the All-Star game. Comes out of the All-Star break, gives up 6 homers in his first start, gets pushed back for his second start, and he's in total now allowed 17 runs in 15 innings after the All-Star break. And that's in addition to the concerns that come with them saying he's got general arm fatigue, them pushing him back in his start, and also just the increasingly cryptic quotes from Joe Ryan. I was there for a couple of them post-game. This one is on the road, but reading through Dan Hayes' story and Bobby Nightingale's story from last night, the quotes have reached disturbing levels of cryptosity, of crypticness. That's not a word either. No. And so I'll read you the one that really stood out. His comments when he's basically being asked what's wrong. You give up 6 homers. You have your start pushed back. Then you're not right. Everyone says you had arm fatigue. And he just kept saying, I don't feel right. My mechanics are off. But he wouldn't just kind of straightforwardly say what's going on, but he kept insisting he was healthy. He said, it's not something I'm concerned about. Well, something's clearly wrong. I mean, not only from a performance standpoint, but also just his quotes after each of these starts is just like a guy who is going through it at a level that is impossible to ignore, physically, mentally, whatever the case. And so this quote really stood out from last night. He didn't miss many bats against the Royals. He just wasn't sharp again. It's not that his velocity tanked, although it was down. It's just he doesn't look sharp. He can't finish off pitches. It doesn't look right. And here was the quote he gave the reporters in Kansas City. Quote, certain things I'm working on still, trying to figure out. We'll get a plan together this week and figure out what's going to be the best for the team going forward. Well, what does that mean? The best for the
Right.
team going
Yeah.
forward. Does that mean he expects to miss starts? Does that mean he does have an injury? Does that mean he needs to be skipped? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And if a guy is going out there and pitching poorly and has a long history of pitching poorly in the second half for durability related reasons, but he's claiming to be healthy, but he's also made it very clear something is going on here. It's not just a bad outing. I don't really know what to make of this.
I mean, that ending of that thing, like, I just don't want to be talking to you anymore. Like,
well, yes,
that right, is
he's not
the way
alone
that
with
I
that.
am, and I'm gonna go into auto answer mode here and
Yeah.
just figure out what the best thing is for the team going forward.
But to me, the auto answer is just, "Hey, it was a bad night. I didn't feel like myself. We'll get it going." He's made it so clear that he doesn't feel right physically, lower half, whether it's extension, where he has a unique delivery that is relying on a higher level of athleticism, flexibility. He's got the weird arm angle. He's not just a normal mechanically kind of straightforward pitcher. And so I worry about that. I worry, is there some sort of significant injury that's not an arm injury maybe that he's hiding? Again, this is just speculation,
Right.
but I think how he's pitched and the things he's said and not said and in the ways he's said them, it makes it impossible not to speculate about what is going on here. And so he claims he's healthy, won't really get into what the issue is other than to say, we're working on it. I'm working on it. I'm not happy with it. He's down. I mean, the performance is down. He seems down. And, he's elite when he's on. He's an all-star when he's on. We see that year after year after year. But he just seems to fall apart, not just in general in the second half, but he seems to be, and I'm guilty of this sometimes in life. John can attest to this. Stuff bumps me off course easier than it should. John saying one thing wrong or us having some Wi-Fi issues or whatever puts me in a spot where I'm just like, I'm done with it. You know what I mean? And that is not a great way to be. And I see some of that in Joe Ryan. We've seen it before. An umpire makes a couple bad calls against him. The inning unravels for him because he's in his head about it. The defense behind him makes a couple of misplays, and sometimes he kind of lets that snowball in a way. He said some things over the years where you're like, well, I appreciate the honesty, but maybe a little bit of, ooh, can't believe he said that. And now we're in a spot now where it's like, he's just so cryptic about this and this stuff of the team going forward. I'm worried about him genuinely because the truth is I don't think they have a chance to make a run at the playoffs here if Joe Ryan's not Joe Ryan.
Yeah. I mean, the hope was that he was going through the cliche is sort of the dead arm period, right? There is a dead arm period that happens.
General arm fatigue is what
general arm fatigue is what they called it. But in baseball parlance for the last 80 years, it's been, I'm going through a little bit of a dead arm right now, it's feeling more and more like that's not necessarily it. He doesn't look the same out there. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you in that they're going to have a hell of a time. I mean, listen, they're missing Buxton and they're missing Ryan for this stretch run. And for all the additions they made at the trade deadline, and those are significant additions, if we'd have gotten to the trade deadline and they traded away Joe Ryan and they traded away Byron Buxton, we'd be like, we've got we're not too hopeful for August and September.
If they would have traded those guys away and also added Hoffman, Kremer, and Minter, we would have said, well, what the hell did they bother adding Hoffman, Kremer, and Minter and giving up prospects in the process?
Yeah, all those trade deadlines where you're like, oh, we don't need to trade for anybody. We're getting so-and-so back off the injured list. It's just like trading for, Byron Buxton or something like that. This is the opposite side of that. This is the, we made some trades, but also, we traded away Buxton and Ryan. I mean, he's going to be working through it. They're going to be working through it. And we just have to sit and watch it and see what's going to happen. I'm not as optimistic as I was even after his last start. Every start. Right.
Into the worry mode with this. Like, I think something's going on here.
I mean, every start now, every start he has, you've got that is probably even a bigger question than when they're winning or going to lose the game. And that's saying something for a team that's in a pennant race and, at 500 and, every game counts and you could end up missing the wild card by a 2-game stretch here. Like all of these games count a lot. it's hard to let somebody work through whatever it is they're working through to do it. But with him, I feel like you have to. He's got so much upside on that. But what do we always say? It's we look at the trend, and the trend is in the negative direction right now with Joe Ryan. I'm waiting for it to try and turn around.
Yeah, and I mean, on one level, they added Dean Kremer, which is the depth. And if you have to shut Joe Ryan down, or you can't rely on Joe Ryan, at least you have you can call Zebby back up, and then you just have a fight. On the other hand, if Joe Ryan is shut down, or Joe Ryan just continues to be hit or miss in these outings and keeps pitching, it's not going to matter. Because, if they don't have Joe Ryan, similar to if Buxton doesn't come back at any point this season, it's just going to be extremely challenging for them, no matter what happens with the other 24 spots on that roster, to win games. Because, like I said, they got 48 games left. They got to win more than they lose at this point. And if you don't have your two All-Stars, literally the last 2 years, they've both been All-Stars. That's a really tall order. And then the bigger picture thing with Ryan, they got to a spot where they decided to buy, and they did. But once they reached that spot, selling Ryan was not going to be an option. I mean, we talked about with Ryan Jeffers, and he's an impending free agent. They sure as hell weren't going to be able to pull off the two-step of bringing in help and trading Joe Ryan, like we just said. But then I also thought, well, at this point, even if they had been in selling mode, and Joe Ryan had been dead arm, fatigue, 6 homers allowed, starts push back coming out of the break, plus factoring in what teams will absolutely figure out with him, which is every year he's bad in the second half or not as effective in the second half. I think even if they were full-on sellers, they weren't going to get a significant enough return for Joe Ryan relative to what they might have gotten last deadline or this offseason or even 6 weeks ago or something like that. Well, but then, so that became a moot point, obviously.
Right. I'll take it a step further. You've got the cause and effect being, well, we're going for it, so we're not trading Ryan. Mm-hmm. I mean, part of the decision and we might as well go for it or we not sell is, well, we ain't getting anything for Ryan. Even if we did sell, it's not like we're going to rebuild this whole organization at this point because we know we're not getting anything for Ryan. We might get something for Jeffers, and we might get the throw-off person for Larnach or for Bell or something like that. But the big prize was going to be, what are they going to cash in for Ryan? And once that became no longer really an option after a couple of starts, it makes it that much easier to decide, yes, you're really going to go for it.
Sure, but they declared their intentions.
Agreed.
Before this got to this level, at least with Ryan.
Right. Yes.
But then even beyond that, and this we can finish up with this, you're at the point now where, given his year after year post-break decline, being one of the more extreme that you will ever see in a good pitcher consistently over years, whether he continues to just kind of pitch sporadically well and up and down, or he gets shut down, or there's something else going on that gets revealed here physically, either way, you've certainly reached the point at which even trading him this offseason becomes a lot more challenging to get what you would perceive as proper value for him.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's shut down with an injury or he just kind of limps to the finish line performance-wise and he finishes with a 5-something ERA in the second half or whatever, let's say they go into the offseason going, okay, well, we got a year left to Joe Ryan. We're going to move him. We got Dean Kremer for the rotation. We got Pablo coming back. We're going to get what we can. Well, the market for Joe Ryan at this point, it didn't just crater for this deadline.
No,
it craters heading into the offseason too.
Sure.
And that just has
and maybe next deadline too.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see at that point.
What does he have to, what can he do in the first half to ensure he's going to be productive in the second half?
I mean, I think obviously making a third straight All-Star team, there's still going to be generating a lot of interest in him at next year's deadline. It would maybe give people a little bit of pause, but I think that's much different than heading into this offseason where he's not even pitching well, or maybe he missed some time, or whatever the case may be. You call these same handful of teams that have been talking to you about him for the last year and a half, 2 years, and you say, hey, we'll take that offer we talked about at last year's deadline, or we'll take that offer we talked about in January, or whatever. They're going to say, the hell you will. First of all, he's only got 1 year left instead of a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years left at these various windows where they were entertaining trades for him. And also, we're not even sure what he is at this point, So I think that it just has we're so focused on the trade deadline. We spent the first hour of the show talking about the trade deadline, rightfully, I think. But whether they were selling, whether they were buying, whether they are looking ahead to next year, Joe Ryan is such a fundamentally large piece of this equation at every direction you could turn on the field for the roster, trying to recoup value for him, looking ahead to his free agency. I mean, these are just such huge decision points, and he has such a wide range of potential value, either holding him and getting performance from him. It's varied so widely, but even trading him, it could vary. I mean, what they could have gotten for him, and there's been some reports that we've talked about on the Patreon side about what they turned down for him last year at the deadline compared to what they might have gotten for him this year at the deadline, or may even get for him in January. I mean, it's apples to oranges at that point. I mean, it's just it's so different, and that's his performance and some of the kind of, black cloud hanging over some of the uncertainty with him. And it matters now because you need him at his best to make the playoffs. If you do make the playoffs, you certainly need him at his best to have any chance in the playoffs. But it's going to matter for the offseason too. And it's going to matter for next trade deadline if you don't move him this offseason. So
it's
I don't know.
Significant sub-storyline here over these last 2 months. Beyond that of what the Twins end up doing, like part of the question can be, and what does Joe Ryan do, both A, to help them move forward and actually make the postseason, but B, to position themselves well for, his own value moving forward. So.
And the funny thing about the deadline, and we talked about it, there's only 48 games left, right? So they're adding Minter for 15 or 20 innings. You're adding Kremer for, 8 or 9 starts, potentially. You're adding Hoffman for 15 or 20 innings. Those are extremely small samples. I mean, you're talking about maybe you get 100 innings from all 3 guys in the final 2 months of the season. And so the impact of that, you're looking at the deadline realistically with these type of moves to add 1 or 2 wins, right? You're looking to sort of close out one more tight game because you got a better bullpen. Right. Or Kremer wins one more start compared to, let's say, Zebby Matthews filling that same rotation spot. I know people want to see these guys have great impact and all that. But you're basically trying to pick up 1 or 2 games over the remaining 48 games above and beyond what your baseline was to begin with. Because you're a game or 2 out of the playoffs. So 1 or 2 games could mean playoffs or not playoffs. But the funny thing about kind of shooting for 1 or 2 games from like a data or statistical standpoint in adding value is that just by losing last night, that there's a loss right there. And I'm not saying those guys caused that loss, but what I'm saying is if you just lose the first game out of the deadline, you've already given back like half of what you were trying to gain, or a quarter of what you were trying to gain there. And taking that a step further, which you're going to lose games, I get that, I'm not saying that, but taking that a step further, you're trying to pick up, let's say at most, 2 wins by adding these 3 pitchers. Well, the difference between either a good Joe Ryan and a bad Joe Ryan, or a good Joe Ryan and an injured, shut down Joe Ryan over the final 2 months of the season is probably about 1 or 2 wins. Yeah, and so that is why he is every bit as important as the deadline. And because you have the domino effect of what this could mean in the offseason, next deadline, this is unfortunately, I wish this wasn't the case, but this is unfortunately a very big story right now, and a very big thing that we're going to watch. And you're in a spot where you're breaking down every quote. I mean, I found myself the last 2 times, because he started at home and I was in the post-game scrums in the clubhouse, I find myself listening to what he's saying, but also just like studying him almost. Like I think I'm like at a poker table trying to see a tell in somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm just looking at his body language and I'm all that stuff. And that sucks as a place to be. And so we'll see. I think I'm enthused. I think we're in general agreement about the deadline. You give it a B+, I give it a B-. They could have maybe done a little bit more in this regard or shot a little higher, but I think they did what they said they were going to do. From an ownership standpoint, from a front office standpoint, they did what the roster and the players wanted them to do. Now it's on the players to actually win more than they lose, which has been a challenge for them over prolonged stretches for the final 2 months of the season. And within that, Joe Ryan's status is just looming over absolutely everything.
As is Buxton's.
Yes, that too.
I mean,
that
we haven't really
that's
talked
every
about...
bit as big.
Right, yes.
For slightly different reasons, but it's every bit as big. He's not there.
Yeah, he's been out of sight, out of mind for a week. Right. Yeah, Joe Ryan was last night. Right. So let's talk about that.
And so, okay. Thank you to our many sponsors today. Chiefly among them, our presenting sponsor, which is Black Stack. Go check them out in person, 94 and 280. They got so many good beers on tap. Such a great, cool spot to bring a group and hang out. You can watch a Twins game on the giant screen, or check them out, local liquor stores, Most of them have them. The ones that don't, tell them to add them. They can. John loves it. I like the beer and I love the location. John loves the beer, and that means something because John drinks a million beers. Nobody knows more about beer than John Bonus.
That's right.
And also just support them because they support us. They are fans of this show. They are fans of the Twins. They are good people running it. Blackstack couldn't speak more highly enough about them, the people, the place, or the beer.
We will be back with a free show a week from Friday, and that will be after the Field of Dreams game versus Philadelphia, which we'll probably be recording that while I am still in Iowa.
Assuming
the Field of Dreams.
that Iowa has reached the point where they have Wi-Fi. As Iowa
assuming as much.
Just a little Iowa humor to finish up here.
That's right. But in the meantime, we also are going to be doing plenty of shows on Patreon. Every series we will be talking about. You watch those games and you want somebody to talk to or vent about the game or to celebrate the game, whether it's a Cody Clemens grand slam or a stinker of an outing by Joe Ryan, we will be talking about it a couple extra times every week over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Gleam. It's just $8 a month. Join us for the stretch run. Join us for August and September. This is what you watch.
This
baseball
is the point
for.
of the whole thing, everyone.
This is right. Yes.
I know people want to be like, what's the point of the deadline if they're not going to win a World Series? What's the point of this? The point is to watch a team trying to make the playoffs, trying to win, trying to be competitive.
And if they make the playoffs, they'll be facing these same teams that are trying to sneak into the postseason.
It ain't exactly a murderer's row in the American League.
That's
right
exactly.
Now.
Yeah,
So
you could make a pretty good case that everybody should be going strong in the American League at the trade deadline because the window is wide open.
Obviously, on the Patreon side, we'll react to any Joe Ryan news that we get or any other further performance and thoughts from him. We're also probably planning, because we did the free show on a Wednesday instead of a Friday, we're going to be back Friday with an exclusive Patreon episode where we will answer any questions you guys have about the trade deadline or the status of the team going forward that we didn't already cover, which we tried to hit every, check every box and round every base. But there's so many moving parts here and so many kind of offshoot questions that I just know you're probably listening to this right now saying, oh, I wish they would have talked about this. I wish they would have talked about that.
Yeah.
Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. Friday will be your chance. We'll send out a call for questions to all of the Patreons. On Thursday, all you do is send it into our private exclusive Patreon email address, and we'll just answer a whole bunch of them on Friday's show. So we look forward to talking to the Patreon subscribers then. If not, we'll be back a week and a half from now, next Friday, with the usual free show on YouTube and other places you get your podcast. Thank you again to all the sponsors, including Blackstack, and we will see you guys.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Cleveland